Alright, hey guys. Yeah, I didn't take any video of this process, but I figured I'd put a little slideshow together, showcasing what I did for the cam install. This first image, all I was doing was taking the oil filter off, just draining the oil from the bike. And then this picture, I was removing the exhaust. Start with the muffler and work your way up to the heads. Okay, and in this picture, I was removing the heat shields. Regardless if your exhaust has heat shields or not, you're still going to have to swing the foot controls out of the way. And once the foot controls are out of the way, this is the exhaust without any of the heat shields. And I didn't take any pictures, but after the heat shields, you're going to need to remove the O2 sensors and the nuts going into the head. And then after the exhaust is off, you're going to need to take the intake off. Pretty self-explanatory, you just remove the bolts. So here is the muffler, exhaust, heat shields, and intake. So with all that off, be sure to plug up the holes. You don't want anything falling into the motor. Alright, so at that point I was done with the first day's teardown. For day 2, you're going to start off with removing the spark plugs. Okay, and then you're going to want to get a little jack to bring up the back tire just so you can rotate the motor while you bolt cut the push rods out. And I'm not going to go into detail how to do this, but basically you're going to want either the back 2 push rods moving or the front 2 push rods moving together, and when they're both moving at the same time, then you can go to the opposite side and bolt cut those out. Alright, so here's just a couple images of the tappet blocks, I believe they're called. Something to note with these, be wary that there is an O-ring on top of there, so you don't want that falling in. I mean, you're going to take it all apart anyways, so it doesn't matter. Okay, and then another picture that I forgot to take was the actual lifters. So beneath the tappet blocks are the tappet cuffs. So you're going to first need to take the tappet cuffs off, and then you can just slide the lifters out with your fingers. Alright, and then this image is just showing how even though the bike was drained, there's still going to be oil coming out of that side case when you open it up. Alright, now time for the fun stuff.
So anyways, let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
And this is what you're going to see when you take that case off. We're going to be replacing everything in here except for the 2 sprockets and the chain. So start off by removing the old chain tensioner. So when you remove the 2 sprockets and the chain, you're going to remove the actual OEM Harley-Davidson backing plate, but you're going to leave the oil pump attached, and you're just going to pull it out as one big unit, and this is what you're left with. And at this point, you're done. You're completely done with teardown. We're going to start installing the new stuff. One more thing that you got to remove using a specialty tool is the inner bearing. And then also for the sprockets, you're going to need a specialty tool for that as well. And here's what that bearing looks like inside of the motor. It's like literally right behind the camshaft. And that's how it should look when you extract it. And this is how the bearing looks, the one that comes in the S&S kit. It's basically the same thing. The cage is a little bit different. You'd use that same tool that you used to extract the old one to install it. It comes with another install piece. But when you go to install it, make sure you install it with the lettering facing out of the engine and the rounded part facing in towards the engine. And with the new bearing in, we could start putting in the oil pump. One thing to note about the oil pump, make sure you it comes with a couple O-rings that you do not put any on the oil pump and press it into the case. They got to be put into the case first and then pressed in. Okay, and then the camshaft is just going to ride on that newly installed bearing. Okay, and then once the oil pump and the camshaft are both installed, you're going to want to install the backing plate. Now, you're not going to torque it down yet. You're just going to snug everything up. Okay, and there's a sequence to how you do this. I can't remember exactly, but I believe you loosely tighten up all the outside bolts, and then it's labeled on there how you torque them down. And then you're going to do the same thing for the 4 provided oil pump bolts. Except before you torque those down, you're going to spin the motor twice and then torque them down. And then lastly in here, you're going to put on the 2 sprockets, the chain, and lastly the chain tensioner. But there's a process to this as well. I'll put a couple links to some good videos down below, but I'm not going to go into it in detail here. Alright, and then from here you can go ahead and put the cover on the cam chest if you want. We're completely done in there. Alright, so next we're going to move up to the tappet blocks. So go ahead and drop in the newly provided lifters. And then while using a 2/1000 feeler gauge, you're going to slide it in the front of one of the lifters and tighten down that bolt. Make sure you're torquing everything down to spec. I'm not going to put the specs in this video. And then we're going to put the push rod tubes in place with the push rods underneath. And before you put them in place, make sure that the opposite tappet cuffs, the lifters inside of there, put your fingers down in there while you rotate the motor and make sure that they're on overlap. Alright, and then you're going to get the push rods up in place. Again, this is not a how-to video. I'm not going to explain how they go together, but you do got to make sure that they're together correctly. One thing I will note is before you put the pushrod tubes in place, make sure that the new O-rings are up inside of the head and down in the tappet blocks. And also before you put the new O-rings, make sure you remove the old O-rings. And from this point, you just got to put the exhaust together, the intake, fill it up with oil, and you're off to the races.